Division. That's the culprit in the lives of black people in the world today, is division. You know, we're spread out all across the globe in various nations and surviving, and some of us doing well. You know, just melding within the society and just doing what everybody else is doing, trying to make the best of it and trying to have a happy life. But it seems that wherever we are in the world, we are second-class citizens. Sometimes we're not reminded of it, sometimes we are. Sort of like me, as a young boy. I think I was 8 years old the first time I was called the N-word. And my father was in Vietnam, we were living in Kansas, and I was playing with a few kids. They were all white kids. I was the black kid, but I didn't even realize there was a difference between us until one of them called me that name. And that was when the reality set in. And it really didn't set in at the moment because I had never heard that word before. But it was only until later in life, I began to recognize, you know, how deep that was. And so then I'm looking at the plight then. I want to call it the plight, even though some of us aren't really suffering, you know, terribly because we've acquiesced to our situations and we've gotten used to it. But then the plight of the black man worldwide is what I'm believing, and I want to focus on today, is the division. The division between us. We've heard the old saying, united we stand, divided we fall. Well, that I believe that is true, and so to analogize that to the black experience in the world today, the standing is standing in power, standing in maybe equality, standing in first-class citizen. I don't want to say first-class citizen. I want to say in a society where there is no first class, where everyone is just equal. Okay. And so that would be the unified we stand part, okay? Not being subjected to the ill will of a majority. And the divided we fall part, I mean, we're still surviving. It's not like we're dead, but it's just living a substandard life in comparison to the other folks in the nation, for this conversation, the white folks in the nation, that we are side by side with. That we don't hold the same status, and we sort of acquiesce and maintain that situation, and many of us at times find it, well, acceptable, or at least tolerable, because we have other things to worry about. We're trying to make money, you know, we're trying to buy stuff, we're trying to have a good life, we're trying to set up a retirement. So we really don't have time, we feel, to actually focus on those things that are actually not fair if we've made the best of it, okay? But I think we do need to focus on that. I think we do need to recognize that the only enemy that we really have that's keeping us down in the world today is ourselves, is our division. Now for real, the division that we've experienced ancestrally had been placed upon us, okay? But the place that we are now, our status today, is that we're maintaining the division that really, in this day and age, is not necessary. It's voluntary. Now, I don't mean consciously voluntary, but I mean subconsciously voluntary, where we've acquiesced to, oh, well, this is just the way my life is going to be. And you know, in America and all, there's so many distractions that keep us from being focused. One distraction is, you know, making it from payday to payday financially for a large segment of our population. But another distraction are the sports, the entertainment, you know, the fashion, relationships, and all these things that we occupy our minds with, losing sight of the actual, what they used to call the eyes on the prize, taking our eyes off of the prize, that we are not there yet. And the fact that we are not there yet is why we are still experiencing, you know, negativities in our life today. And even in America, many of the laws that even protected black people are being rolled back, okay? So it should give us time to reflect and to think, you know, what should I be doing right now, okay? What should I be doing in my off time? What should I be doing with some extra time on my hands? And this is what I'm doing, trying to share with you. We're going to talk about this division today. Before we're going to talk about the division, I want to give you a certain understanding or an insight into something that happened that many people don't realize during World War II that many nations, many countries were involved in, and the United States as well. And so there was Nazi Germany, and there was Italy, and there was Japan, and we were at war, World War II. And many soldiers on all sides were taken prisoner, were captured, taken prisoner. And so we took many Germans prisoner. They were our POWs, and we flew them to the United States to serve out their POW term until the war was over. And many of these POWs were sent down south into particular states and cities where there were labor shortages because of the war effort. Many of the men were off overseas fighting in World War II. So their jobs weren't being done. Whatever they were doing in their particular hometowns weren't being accomplished, the farm jobs particularly. So what they did, they utilized these German POWs to function within the city in those jobs that left vacant by the military personnel that had left to go fight the war. But lo and behold, what ended up happening, these Germans, of course, were white. And the Germans were the POWs were experiencing benefits from living in the southern states in America. They were allowed to go to restaurants. They were allowed to have social occasions and dances and movies and all that stuff. They were allowed to go places where the black American citizens, many of them whose family and relatives were overseas fighting against these white Germans, these Nazis, they weren't allowed to go. And so imagine the ire raised in the hearts of so many black Americans where these German POWs, these Nazis that had been killing Americans in the war, were now in the United States being offered benefits that black folks, black Americans weren't even experiencing, okay? And I'm not even faulting those people. I'm just not even putting an attitude on it either way. What I'm sharing right here is how white folks stick together, even in war against their mortal enemy who's actually killing their sons and their fathers in a war overseas, being brought as captured prisoners, POWs, to the United States, and still being treated better than black American citizens. That right there is unity. And that's the unity we as black folks, I want to say black Americans, but black people worldwide don't have. We so easily bought into the nations that we're living in, believing that, oh, this is who I am. When push comes to shove, it is not who you are. Because there is a unity among white people that is strong. They're unified. And what I'm suggesting is, rather than rag on that, we need to take notes from that and recognize that the only thing standing in our way of being on even status in this country, the United States, and in every country on this planet, it is ourselves, is our division, okay? And I learned this recently. I put out some videos on Africa lately, especially starting with the Black Scots, and then unifying the black people across the world and challenging the FBA and all that stuff, man. It's out there. But it was like yesterday, I had this revelation. I've been dealing, on social media, particularly on TikTok, with Africans who don't want anything to do with Americans, and I've also been dealing with Americans like the FBA folks that don't want anything to do with Africans, and it's quite interesting, and I've been trying to help, in that divide, recognizing that the only power that we will wield on this planet will be in unity. But I came to a conclusion yesterday. I was talking to this brother. He's like an educated brother, and he's always upset about the situation of black people, particularly in America. And I was sharing with him how we need to be unified as black people across this globe, and he started ragging on Nigerians. He was like, oh, Nigerians are just this, and Nigerians are this, that. And as we begin to have a discussion, as it turned out, his daughter dated a Nigerian, and that particular Nigerian did her wrong. So in his mind, the entire nation of Nigeria is messed up because of that one guy, that one experience that he had. And that's what I'm suggesting today, is that many of our issues that we have with each other aren't really founded on the majority. They're simply ideas that we have for some reason in our minds about each other, and we've allowed them to shape our entire opinion about an entire population of black people. Mind you, the white Americans were fighting a war against Nazi Germany. How much worse could that be? Brought them back to America as prisoners of war and allowed them to date their daughters while they were still lynching black people, okay? That's how we're divided over silly things, over nonsensical things with unfounded reasons, while the white unity is so strong that they had real reasons. Come on, Nazi Germany killing American soldiers, and they're bringing these prisoners of war back to social occasions with their daughters. Come on now. So we as black people need to learn something from that. Where there is unity, there is strength. Where there is division, there is weakness. And so as I was speaking to that brother who had issue with all Nigerians, and I was trying to explain to him, actually he was using that one Nigerian as an example of an ill that he had against the entire continent. Now, how do you take such a minuscule, not even a numerically identifiable number compared to the whole, and use that as your basis to judge the whole? It's nonsense. We buy into division so easy. This guy's educated and falling for something so ridiculous, okay? And so I have another brother, you know, not a brother, but a black man that I was speaking to, and he's a Republican. Voted for Trump. Make America great again, a black man. And see, when you talk about the history in America, you can't justify that. You can try to justify it by talking about fiscal responsibility and the money and all this stuff, but even what we're experiencing right now, that doesn't even really have any foundation to that belief, okay? But the point is, there are a myriad of reasons that we as black people will gravitate toward to justify our division, our ostracizing, our alienating our other black brothers and sisters that are actually unfounded and ridiculous, and actually tools that are given to us by the Europeans that came here and subjected us to oppression. Come on, the politics. Oh, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican. No, you're not. They're using you for your vote. Well, I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Jew, I'm a Christian Protestant, I'm a Christian Catholic, I'm a Christian Baptist, Pentecostal, Methodist, Church of God in Christ, Church of God, all that kind of stuff, man. All these things that are meant to divide us. And they are dividing us. And you know, so I've been speaking to the Americans, like the FBA folks, who simply want to focus on those Americans that came up out of slavery in America, of which I am one, okay, my ancestors. But that right there is problematic. And part of their reason, I've heard part of their rhetoric, you know, is the issue, you know, being sold out by Africans, okay? But you're talking about Africans being sold out by Africans, you know, our lineage, our ancestors. And then the reality is, truth be told, only a minuscule fraction of Africans actually participated in the slave trade compared to the entire continent of Africa. Come on now. Those are criminals. Just like the criminal human traffickers from Mexico today that are human trafficking Mexicans that are trying to get out of that land, and the Mexicans and Guatemalans, all those folks. You can't fault all those folks because of the criminal human traffickers. Yet that's what we have tried to do. Now, I want to give you a similarity now between those that sold us out that were in Africa and those that sold us out here. Now, it's obvious that there were Africans participating in the transatlantic slave trade. What I want to suggest is they weren't your traditional or typical Africans. They were simply criminal human traffickers, just like we have today. That doesn't represent an entire continent. That doesn't even represent an entire nation. It's just a particular criminal element that participated in human trafficking, those Africans, okay? And so they sold out fellow Africans. Okay? So then we come to America during the slave trade, and we want to demonize those Africans who participated in human trafficking and participated in the transatlantic slave trade. What I'm going to suggest today, and I'm not sure how many folks realize this or not, but there were over 100 slave rebellions in the United States during slavery, okay? Over 100. And guess how many were successful? 0. Because someone told. Because a black person told. So we could say we were sold out from Africa by Africans, and I want to say the criminal element, human traffickers. But we were as well sold out in America by those who were slaves, going and telling, it's getting ready to be an escape. That's 100% of the slave revolts were foiled because a black person told. So are we going to hate all black Americans because they're the ones that foiled the slave revolt attempts? No. Individuals. I want to tell you what these individuals are doing now. These individuals, in order to be able to sell out the whole slave revolt, right? In order to be participants in human trafficking by Africans, of Africans, you have to find a way to justify what you're doing, or else you wouldn't be doing it. And so you could take a reason, you demonize these people, find a reason why it's okay to do what you're doing to them, and so you can sleep well about it. And so we do the same thing today is all I'm saying. So we can't identify who in Africa were the descendants of those who sold the Africans out into the slave trade. And we can't identify those in America whose ancestors snitched and told on the folks who were revolting from slavery. And not only were the slave revolts halted, they were put to an end, also, they executed, mutilating oftentimes those that were involved in the slave revolt. So not only was the slave revolt foiled, also there were many black people that were actually massacred and mutilated, murdered as a result of it. So as a result of black Americans telling on these folks who were trying to escape. And so what I'm suggesting is, as it's impossible for us to tell who the descendants of these culprits are, both in the blacks in America and in Africa, all we can identify almost scientifically is what kind of mindset an individual would have to do something like that. And it's a mindset of being able to find a reason why that these people are not good, a reason to justify why you can turn on them and betray them. And so this is what we're doing today, even with our politics. I was talking to a brother today. He was mad, and because black people in America, many of us refer to ourselves as African American. No, we're just American, and he was so mad about that. And he was so consumed in his anger, he was willing to divide himself from any black person who called themselves an African American. Now, mind you, white people will take Nazis that were captured killing Americans in Europe, bring them back to the United States as prisoners of war, and allow them all of the amenities of being an American citizen, the social occasions, eating in restaurants where black people couldn't eat, doing all the things that white people could do in America that black people couldn't do. And they were killing American soldiers overseas. Yet this black man wants to be mad at anyone calling himself an African American, okay? We got Africans being mad at anyone who's an American black. We got Americans mad at anyone who's an African black. We have so much division, and we are sub-second class to white folks on this planet. And all we need to do is look at them, how they unify even with an enemy they are at war with. And we're mad because of what an individual calls himself, or where an individual happens to be living right now. So I've dealt with some of the Africans from different African nations saying this is how American blacks are. Really? Are we that stupid to believe that everyone in an entire nation is responding the same way? Is everyone in your family the same? Is everyone in your nation the same? So there's no one no black person in any nation that is in 100% agreement with every other black person in that nation. So it's an infantile excuse that folks are grabbing onto, blaming an entire nation of black people that they are just like this. When how many have you met? And how do you come to that conclusion? It's unfounded. It's that trick of dividing us, which was perpetrated upon us early on. But now it's like this is how we run, this is how we operate. Without anybody even controlling us, we're dividing ourselves. I'm telling you this, it's ridiculous. And we need to take our heads out of the hole in the sand and recognize that the only power black people are going to have is by being unified. And this whole national divide, so we have aligned ourselves with the nations that oppressed us, and using our allegiance to this nation to demonize other folks of like us who are living in nations that oppress them too. It's ridiculous. And it's a trick. It's a trick that was imposed upon us years ago. I don't even believe they believed it would be this long lasting. They probably figured the jig would be up, in 100 years or so, but we're still hanging on to this division. There's no power in division. Man, I'm telling you this right now, the culprit to the affliction of black folks on this planet and in individual nations, it's not white people. It's us. We've been stuck. We've been stuck in this destructive, self-deprecating, self-destructive mindset that can't see the value in our unity as black people on this planet. We would be free.